Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. If you're watching the YouTube version of this, well, I hope you're watching the YouTube version of this and not listening to the podcast. If you are listening to the podcast, hop over to the YouTube version so you can see what Keith Smith looks like right now. Keith, why don't you explain to everybody what's going on and why you have a cape?
Well, I'm bringing capes back. I
Okay.
think they should be in everyday fashion,
The
but
Incredibles disagrees.
that is true. Yeah, that is true. It causes trouble for superheroes. No, so when the Celtics beat the Lakers a few weeks back, you wore a green shirt.
Yeah.
We did not have an official bet, but I am paying off. The Celtics got stomped by the Lakers last week, so I am in as close to Lakers colors as I can get. I have a fluorescent yellow shirt on, a purple cape, and then I'm rocking an Orlando City hat. Orlando City soccer hat, but they wear yellow and purple. So that is those are their colors. So I'm doing the best I can.
I guess this begs the question, why do you have a purple cape? Like, I was not expecting this when we first logged in this morning, and that was the most shocking thing that I saw was, oh my gosh, Keith is in a cape. What, you happen to have a purple cape laying around in case you have to pay off Lakers bets, or what's going on here?
Yeah, that was it. I have good forward thinking on my part. No, I several years ago we got invited to a last minute Halloween party,
Uh,
and it was a costume party. And when we went to the store, I was like, I'll just grab vampire teeth and a cape and be a vampire. And the cape I grabbed just happened to be purple. It was the only one that they had, so I have this purple cape. It gets stuffed into a bin of Halloween stuff that we have that's in the closet, and there we go. So if I finally had its second use, so now I feel good on the about $4 I spent on it.
well, now I feel like I didn't go far enough. I wore a green T-shirt, and here you are in a purple cape. I guess I'll have to up the ante next time the
Next time.
Lakers and Celtics play each other, which won't be till next season, unless of course they
Yeah, because
meet.
I don't think there's going to be a finals meeting on tap.
Probably not. But
Yeah.
oh my gosh, Keith, but we've got a ton to get to today. So let's dive into it. Shams
Hey,
Charania.
before we get into
Oh,
news, I just want
yes.
to say thank you to everyone for the outpouring of support for me and my family on the loss of
Mm.
our pup. I know front office viewers have seen him often in the recliner behind me. He liked to hang out there during the day quite a bit. So he had cancer. It was he went downhill very rapidly, and we had to unfortunately put him to rest on Saturday. But it was a very tough day for me and my family. But the just notes and texts and emails and tweets and even the comments on the videos just from so many people, cannot thank you all for the love so much for that. And yeah, so it's a little bit of a rough time for the Smith family, but we had 12 amazing years with him, and we had 10 years with his brother before that, and we've still got the other two maniacs tearing around the house, acting like nut jobs right now. You just can't hear them. I can, but I can hear them tearing around the family room. So but thanks to everyone for that, and that'll end the personal portion of the show about my Halloween decor and my family's rough weekend. But let's get to it. Let's talk basketball. I'm ready.
Well, yes, we do certainly appreciate that, and feel for you and your family going through that. That's not a fun thing to deal with. Not easy for sure. But yes, we do have a lot of basketball to get into. Shams Charania put out, I mean, just a tidal wave full of stuff that we need to
Unloaded
talk
the
about.
clip.
Yes, he did. Let's start with the Kyrie Irving thing. Shams reporting that on The Athletic that there is renewed optimism that Kyrie Irving may indeed play for the Nets this season. Keith, you and I were talking about before we came on the air here. I only see this happening one of three ways. Either Kyrie gets vaccinated, the mandates change, or the Nets decide they're going to allow him to play on the road. That's it. And none of those feel all that likely. So what's going on here? Where is this optimism coming from?
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I don't understand it. Mike Prada put a tweet up basically saying the exact same thing you just said, and it is, yeah. So where's the news here? Because New York City has said they are not changing their mandates. The state of New York, I can't remember at this point which one it is, but whichever one it is, it doesn't really matter. They're not changing their mandates, and then the Kyrie, as far as we know, has no plans to get vaccinated. And then with the the last piece is letting him play in just road games, which ownership has said no, we're not interested in that. And that one is really tough because how do you bring him back in that situation? And then what if you're in the East Finals and he can't play in a few of the games on the road, or you're
Do
in
you,
the NBA Finals and he
do you
can't play?
start
How do you
taking to
do
get
that?
rid of home court advantage?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
How
even
would you
then,
do
right. Yeah.
that?
That opens up a whole other can of worms
Right.
for you. So, it sounds like from the tone of the piece, maybe Kevin Durant is the one who's like, hey, I want him back.
Yeah.
We're not the juggernaut we thought we would be, without him, which is,
But they're in
absolutely
first.
makes sense. So yeah, it's yeah, I'm not entirely sure where this comes out of, and I'm not entirely sure we're gonna see him play again this year unless someone in the mention said, what if he just gets vaccinated and he just doesn't want to say it yet, or he wants to do a whole thing on his own about it? And maybe that is the case. And this is a weird one too, because we always say when news leaks out, consider where it may have leaked from.
Sure.
And it's a little bit like who benefits from this? It seems a little unclear.
Yeah, from putting those expectations out there that, I mean, the Nets have been from day one saying we're moving forward without him. We're assuming we're not going to have him. If it happens, great, but we're not going to have him, right? So you keep those expectations low so people aren't constantly asking, is Kyrie coming back? And then the next day, is Kyrie coming back, right? Now this kind of undoes that, and the whole topic comes up again. You can understand why, of course, the Nets would want him. They right now have a point differential of 3.7. They're in first place in the East, but they're not the dominant juggernaut that you would expect them to be. They're 19-8, which again, great record, best record in the Eastern Conference. But obviously, they would love to have Kyrie back. The only thing I can think is that maybe they come off of that road game thing, because that seems like the easiest of the three scenarios to actually happen. But I mean, even that's not an ideal situation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I would want that if I was a team. And I know people talk about, it wasn't Kawhi Leonard a part-time player?
Sure.
Man, the Boston accent just slipped out there for a second. Wasn't he a part-time player for a while there? But that was very different. That was an injury-related thing. This wasn't, all right, we've got a 5-game homestand. We'll see you next week. This is it's just an odd situation, and I'm just not sure. I don't know. I mean, it's good that there's enthusiasm. I'm just not sure I necessarily buy that that's where this is headed.
All right, I agree, and we'll see where this goes. Unless something happens that we're not anticipating that somehow gets Kyrie back, we'll see which path they head down if they indeed intend to bring Kyrie Irving back to the Brooklyn Nets. Next up, though, the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are looking at a few things. Rival teams, according to Shams, rival teams are expressing interest in Cam Reddish, but they believe the Hawks want a first-round pick for him. Now, Reddish was the 10th overall pick, so I'm not surprised that they want a first for him, especially given the value that wings have in the NBA right now, averaging over 11 points per game, shooting 37% from three. Look, the Hawks have a lot of wing players. There's a lot of teams around the NBA that want wing players, so it's not a surprise that one of their wings would have some trade value or some interest around the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I guess your challenge if you're Atlanta comes in is you're let's say 2-3 weeks ago, you would have been dealing from a position of strength because you had Herder, Bogdanovich, Reddish, and Hunter. Now you're down Hunter. Sounds like maybe the rest of the year, maybe not, at least for the bulk of the rest of the season. And then Herder is there and playing well. And then you're going to get Bogdanovich back. So are you still looking at moving Reddish? I don't know. I think you really want to, in today's NBA, you really want to have 3 quality wing players that you can just kind of plug in night after night and feel pretty good about. So I don't know that I would necessarily be looking to move him if I was them, but let's see. I mean, it's a team that's getting increasingly more expensive as the years go by. Next year, there'll be, probably a tax team, barring anything else as Trae Young's extension kicks in. So this could be a way to, infuse a little bit of young talent.
I also mentioned that they are expecting to promote Landry Fields from assistant general manager to general manager under Travis Schlenk. Mm-hmm. So that's something of note there. Landry Fields, former NBA player, but could be moving up in the Hawks organization. Things have been going fairly well. I mean, I know that compared to last season. This season's Hawks have not been doing quite as well, but overall, it feels like the Hawks are on the upswing, and they want to reward the people that were a part of that.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it completely makes sense too. You're in the position of, yeah, well, let's keep things together. As you said, it didn't start off. This year started off a little rough. They're 13-13 as we record this, but they have been playing better as of late. I think it's just just needed a little bit of time, I guess, to get it together. I mean, but 13-13, they're what a whopping like 2 games out of home court advantage. So it's not that big of a deal.
No, it's not. Let's jump to your team. The Boston Celtics, rival teams around the NBA, expect Dennis Schroder to be available on the trade market. Schroder averaging over 17 points per game right now for the Celtics on a pretty good deal. The Celtics were able to take advantage of Schroder not finding the big contract he was looking for out on the market, and they got him on that 1-year mid-level exception deal. And so here you are with almost 5 assists and over 17 points per game from Schroder. And there's the potential that they could trade him. Now, Keith, that begs the question, if you've got a guy that's scoring like that and is producing like that on a pretty favorable contract, why trade him?
Yeah, and I'll lead this with, if you guys want more in-depth thoughts on this, I'll have an article up on Celtics blog a little bit later today on Monday explaining all the same things. But laying it out here is, yes, he's on a value deal. Yes, he's played well. They have almost no way to re-sign him unless his market goes exactly the way it went again. Again this summer as it did last summer. They just don't have the ability to bring him back. He's too good to re-sign for the minor bump the Celtics could give him to about $7 million. That's probably not going to happen. Then that means you're looking at a guy who's probably going to get the full MLE from some team of around 10 million would be my guess. I think some teams will look at him and say, yeah, he could come in, be our 6th man and do his thing off our bench, which is what the intention was in Boston. And then if you're the Celtics, your hope was we get him in on the cheap. We're a pretty good team. We can at least push to make a deep playoff run, and we can have him and know, yeah, we're probably going to lose them at the end of the year, but it is what it is. But then with the way the season has gone for Boston, they're 13-14 right now. They haven't been all that good. To play a deep playoff run doesn't look all that likely. So then you're looking at, maybe we move on from him, get what we can get from him, free up those backup point guard minutes for our young guy, Peyton Pritchard, and just move on, because what's going to happen? We're going to have a slightly worse record. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what the thought there against it is. So I got why they signed him. I got why it made a lot of sense at the time. Now the way things have gone, I also understand why the Celtics might be open to trading him. And it's not going to be a massive return. You're not getting anything huge, but you could either get a young player or maybe a top 20 protected 1st-round pick if a team really needs a point guard or something. And that what makes him different from a guy like John Wall or some of these other big names is he only makes $6 million. So anybody in the league can figure out how to trade for him at that number. It's not a thing where, he's like somebody who's making a, $40 million, which is almost impossible to move.
Yeah, exactly. So you can find suitors pretty easily for Schroder on that number. The question is, what kind of assets can you get? I mean, there's a little bit of a challenge there too, right? Because the salary is so small for Dennis Schroder, that if you were looking for a player that comes back, most likely a guy that's going to be valuable is going to have a larger salary, but perhaps you get something involving picks or something like that, where, again, like you said, for the Celtics, you've got essentially an asset right now that expires at the end of the year because you probably can't bring him back. So that's where that makes sense.
Yep. Trevor, I'm losing the cape, man. I apologize. It's bothering my ears. So capes are not coming back in fashion, I don't think.
We're gonna stick with the Incredibles theory.
That's it. Yep. The Incredibles were correct.
The Cleveland Cavaliers. This was an interesting little note from Shams that Darius Garland is part of the reason why the Cavs have been so good this season, and of course he is correct. He's been fantastic. 19 points, 7.6 assists. Plus 1.3 steals, 38% from 3. But then Shams throws in a little bit at the end. Garland, a possible all-star candidate, is eligible for a 5-year, $181 million maximum contract extension in July. Keith, we say it all the time. Who benefits from this? Gee, I wonder where this
I
little bit
wonder.
came from.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Darius Garland has had a
He
great season,
has.
and he is, eligible for that big contract. And quite frankly, I'm rooting for him to get it. I hope he does get it. I'm always rooting for these guys to get paid. It's just yeah, well, I wonder who gave that note of how much it was, because it certainly wasn't the Cavs. Hey, let's roll the Pacers into
Yes.
this one. Because right, so the Pacers, we don't need to probably rehash all of it, because we already did a pretty good video on that one that you can go back, or you can listen to it on the podcast version. But Karis LeVert, Sabonis, or Turner, those guys are all on the market. So the report here is Sabonis is expected to draw the most interest. Yeah, no kidding. He's great. That makes a ton of sense why that would be. But teams are looking at Turner if Sabonis isn't there. And then the Karis LeVert part, why I wanted to roll it in with the Cavs was Joe Varden reported, Cleveland-based reporter for The Athletic, reported that the Cavs are interested in Karis LeVert, and that he's a guy who they see as making sense because he would bring some size to their backcourt,
Mm-hmm.
which they don't necessarily have. There's a lot of open questions about Colin Sexton. He's a pending free agent, as well as he is going to be coming off of that knee injury. So we don't know exactly where that will go. So I think that's why just wanted to roll this one in there. I think there's a deal that can be made there that makes a lot of sense for both the Pacers and the Cavaliers to get LeVert to Cleveland. I'm just not sure that's necessarily absolutely the way we'll go, but it makes sense why there's that interest.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely does. I think the Pacers are going to make a move. Is it LeVert to Cleveland? Maybe, but we'll have
Sure.
to wait and see how that goes down right now. But
I've put him very high on my list of players that I expect to be on a different team on trade deadline day. By the end of trade deadline day, Karis LeVert.
If you had to pick who's number one on that list, is it
Cleveland?
LeVert?
Oh, number one player?
Yeah. Who's top of your list? Like, this guy is going to be on another team after the trade deadline.
Yeah, he'd be pretty high on the list because his contract is very easily movable. So I would put him pretty high on the list. I would say I'm going to put Simmons up there again. I just feel like it is going to happen. We're going to talk about that in depth here in a little bit. But yeah, I like they 1A with those two guys.
Okay, that's fair. Let's get to the Detroit Pistons. Jerami Grant, according to Shams, one of the most sought-after players in a potential trade. Again, no surprise, we've talked about how in-demand wing players are in the NBA. So Jerami Grant being a very good one, especially on a reasonable contract, $20 million this season. He is, of course, in demand. And the Lakers and the Trailblazers listed as teams that are pursuing Jerami Grant. Jerami Grant has, of course, blown up on the Lakers a few times, and so not a surprise that they are interested in him there. But Shams also mentions that he has one season remaining, eligible for a 4-year extension worth $112 million this offseason. Interested teams understand Grant will command most of his maximum salary in an extension, and similar in a scenario similar to when the Magic traded for Aaron Gordon. So a lot to break down.
Traded away Aaron Gordon.
Yes, yeah, traded away. I mean, yeah. Aaron Gordon. But so a lot to break down there. Not only are teams interested in Jerami Grant, which isn't a surprise, but they're also putting out there the look. If you do trade for Jerami Grant, be prepared to offer him this extension. This is what we want if you're interested in him via trade. So again, reading between the lines, that's obviously coming from not necessarily the Pistons camp, but the Jerami Grant side of things.
Yeah, and this one is interesting because you have to factor in that he's out for the next 6 weeks at least, with torn ligaments in his thumb, or sprained ligaments, I believe it is, in his thumb. So we want to be clear about that. So $20 million, not impossible to move, not such a huge number. It's usually once you get above 30, 35 million that it gets difficult to move to move a salary. Just under 21 million for next season. So yeah, really good players, really blossomed in Detroit. Probably you're not going to get the same numbers out of Jerami Grant on a really good team,
Sure.
because then he's going to slot into a more proper role as like your third, fourth best player, versus being the headline guy as he is for the Pistons. But yeah, and clearly the Pistons are not going anywhere this year. Probably not next year. This is probably, we're probably in the second year of a 3-year rebuild right now, and that's fine. So yeah, so it makes sense why they would move him. The Lakers part of it, that part doesn't make so much sense. I don't know if you want to get into that now and why
Sure.
it doesn't. And it's not. Jerami Grant would be a wonderful fit on the Lakers. He'd be, a great fit there. He'd be basically everything they're hoping to get from Trevor Ariza plus plus plus. The
Yep.
reality is, at $20 million, the Lakers don't have a salary to go get him. This is, I tweeted this earlier today, is we got to stop just throwing the Lakers in on all these players that they're interested in. I'm sure they are, but unless they're trading LeBron, AD, or Russ, and they're not going to be able to get the vast majority of these guys if they make over about $17 million. It's just not realistic. I know people throw out, well, you do Talon Horton Tucker, Kendrick Nunn. All right, so that's
Yeah.
$14 million or so. Then people want to say throw in,
A
these
veteran
six
minimum.
minimum
Yeah.
salary guys. No team has the ability to do a 7-for-1 trade. It's just not a thing anybody can do, because you'd have to wait in order to complete the trade. You have to waive other players first, and nobody's sitting on that many guys that they're willing to move on from and waive. So that's it's just math at this point. It's not about that. The Lakers also don't have picks really to throw in to plus up offers. It's a lot of, I think Bobby Marks was on the low post, and the way he put it, I think is really good. And I think it's even something we have both said here
Hmm.
for the Lakers. A lot of what you see is what you get. This is gonna be what the bulk of this roster is
Yeah.
for the rest of this year. There may be a minor move or two in there that comes, maybe somebody on the bio market, something like that. But just, a guy like Jeremy Grant who makes 20 million, or anybody who makes more than that, probably not.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be looking at stacking up Taylor Horton Tucker, none, plus a veteran minimum guy, whether that's, I mean, whoever you want to throw in there, DeAndre Jordan,
Yep.
whatever contract you want. And that's, like you said, that's the challenge, is getting a team to take that on. You would have to find somebody that just loves Taylor Horton Tucker enough to where they say, okay, that's worth it. And then you're talking about throwing in the 2027 first. That's the first round pick
Yep.
that the Lakers can deal. Is that enough? Are there other teams that offer more? Is it worth going through for, if you're the Pistons, is it worth cutting guys in order to do
Yep.
that? There's a lot of hurdles to clear. The one thing that we know, though, is Rob Pelinka basically leaves no stone unturned. He's going to do
Sure.
everything he can to find something out there. And so that's why I would expect their name to pop up a lot in stuff like this, because I'm sure they will be very active. Doesn't mean they're going to get something done, but because of the constraints that we mentioned, and this is, we go back to the offseason, this is where not signing Alex Caruso hurts them that much more. Not only do you not have him as a player on the floor helping you out, but you also don't have the contract to throw into a potential deal if somebody pops up on the
And
market that you would have liked.
this was where, too, I kind of hammered over the offseason the idea of, especially as this market completely dried up, re-signing Dennis Schroder
Yeah.
to what? All right, it wasn't going to be 20 plus million, like, maybe was real, maybe wasn't real. There's all kinds of conflicting reports on that now, but for even 15 million, because then you now had that tradable mid-range salary there. I get why they didn't do it. They felt good about what they had. They felt
Right.
like they didn't need to go that deep into the luxury tax and all the things that came along with that. But yeah, if you don't have those mid-range contracts, it becomes really, really hard to make those trades. Because like the Warriors, right? They're the best team in the league right now. They keep getting thrown in on all these different players as well. But it's because they have a bunch of these salaries that are sitting kind of in the
Right.
middle that they can make trades with. So that's just where it gets really, really hard for the Lakers to do much in the trade market.
Now, what about the Blazers? Also mentioned as a
Sure.
landing spot. That's an interesting team. I mean, they're going to be motivated to try to fix things
Yeah.
right now. I mean, winning cures all, and they're dealing with a lot at this moment. If they could start winning, that would certainly help them out. What do they use to try to get Jerami Grant?
Yeah, no, they can do a lot of different things, because you could do something like Robert Covington as the base salary matching there, and then you just got to add one more contract to that and go get him. is that something Detroit wants? That's probably more of like a 3-team trade where Covington goes off to another team and Detroit gets routed a younger player that could maybe help them, in the future. But yeah, I mean, Grant makes a lot of sense for the Trailblazers. He would fill some needs for them. Is that you got to have that conversation with Damian Lillard and like, hey, is that the guy? Is this,
Mm-hmm.
where we really want to go? Or is this part of a bigger changes that also see, maybe Yusuf Nurkic gets moved and some other stuff? Cause you start to erode your spacing a little bit around Lillard and McCollum if you trade away too many guys who are shooters. It's not that Grant's a terrible shooter, but he's just not really
It's
a
just
true
average.
floor spacer. So yeah, that's becomes a little bit of your challenge there. But the Blazers have, I know teams that really like Nasir Little. I know teams that really like Anthony Simons. So yeah, it could be the deal that makes some sense.
All right, well, we talked Pacers already, so let's wrap things up with the Warriors. Some good news here. Klay Thompson still on track to make his season debut in the coming weeks as soon as just before Christmas. Fingers crossed. I want to see him in
Yeah.
that Warriors-Suns Christmas Day game or as late as right after Christmas. No, let's make it a Christmas Day thing. He has rejoined the Santa Cruz Warriors to help rehab. He's starting to ramp things up. I mean, get back soon, Klay. It's been way too long since we've seen Klay
Yeah.
Thompson out on the floor.
Yeah, agreed. And James Wiseman, he did his first interview the other day. Said Klay looks great. To him, looks like Klay. There's been other reports that have come out that he looks, like he's in phenomenal shape and is looking really, really good there. So, I think we all felt he had a chance to really make it back from these often career, if not ending, altering injuries without a ton of impact just because of who he is as a player. He's never been a guy who's been super reliant on athleticism or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's going to be great to get him back there. And they said right now it's just about ramping up his time because they don't want to bring him in playing 10 minutes a night. They want to bring him in, fairly ready to go. So it sounds like he's been playing, I believe the article said 5 to 7 minute stints at a time with the G League Warriors. And they're hoping to continue to build that up and go. So yeah, all good news there on the Klay Thompson front.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's wrap things up there, but we are not done for today. No, there is way more that we need to get into.
Yep.
That's going to be coming up on the next video today. We're going to be touching base on Ben Simmons. We're talking a little bit more about the Lakers, some returns there. We've got stuff on the Knicks. We've got the Orlando Magic, all kinds of things to dive into next. So be on the lookout for that one. Don't forget to subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Turn on those notifications as well. Till next time, everybody, stay safe and see ya.